The room went quiet after my sister's toast. Her smile didn't reach her eyes when she said, "Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family." Everyone laughed. My parents, our cousins, even the aunt who still owed me money. I kept my face still, glass trembling just slightly in my hand. Inside, it felt like something cracked, clean, deep, permanent. They clapped like it was a joke, but to me, it was a sentence. That night, I realized family doesn't always stab you in anger. Sometimes, they do it smiling, while everyone cheers. My name is Cornelia Whitmore, and that dinner ended whatever was left of the person they thought I was. When my sister stood up at dinner, smiling with her wine glass raised, I thought she was about to congratulate me. Instead, she said, "Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family." Everyone laughed. I didn't. The sound of clinking glasses echoed through the room, mingling with the faint hum of jazz from the speaker and the distant whisper of the tide outside my window. The table gleamed under the golden light, navy linen, polished silver, candles flickering like they were trying to stay alive. The smell of roasted turkey and rosemary filled the air, but my chest felt hollow. I had spent 2 days preparing everything down to the smallest detail. It wasn't just a dinner. It was a peace offering. I thought maybe, just this once, they'd look at me and see something worth being proud of. Sabrina's voice sliced through the warmth. The laughter that followed was sharp, metallic. Even my parents joined in, as if cruelty was part of the toast. My smile didn't move, but the corners of my eyes burned. I lowered my gaze to the plate in front of me, perfectly white porcelain, watching a drop of red wine spill from my glass, spreading slowly across it like blood through cloth. I said nothing. Not because I was afraid, but because the noise around me no longer mattered. I knew the truth would surface eventually, and when it did, it wouldn't need my voice to defend it. I smiled instead, a quiet, practiced gesture, and felt something inside me fracture. Clean, invisible, final, like glass breaking under silk. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the windows. The waves kept their rhythm, and somewhere between the laughter and the silence, I realized that was the night my family stopped being mine. 3 days before the dinner, my phone rang. My mother's voice was soft, almost too careful. "Sabrina wants everyone together again," she said, as if reading a script. I hesitated, the silence between us stretching thin, but finally said yes. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe hope, maybe just habit. I threw myself into the preparations. The smell of polished pine filled the house, the kind my father used to love. I ironed the navy tablecloth until it was smooth as glass, set out silverware that hadn't seen company in years, and uncorked the Cabernet I knew he'd recognize. Every detail mattered. It wasn't just a dinner, it was an offering, a chance to rebuild something that, deep down, had never truly existed. That night, as I checked the oven timer one last time, my phone buzzed. A message from Sabrina. "Don't overdo it, sis. Family doesn't need to be impressed." The words were light, casual, wrapped in false warmth, but I could feel the smirk behind them. I turned the screen face down and walked to the window. Outside, the sea was wrapped in fog, the waves faint but relentless, whispering what I already knew. They'd never really seen me. Not once. I sat at my desk and opened the old drawer that stuck halfway. Inside was the faded folder I hadn't touched in years, the one with the loan documents. 8 years ago, I had signed my name to save my parents' furniture store, taking on a $250,000 guarantee. No one ever asked, no one ever thanked me. I had convinced myself it was duty, but after hearing Sabrina's words at dinner, that duty had begun to feel like a wound that never closed. The papers still smelled faintly of ink and dust. As I traced my own signature, the wind outside shifted, the glass panes rattling. I folded the contract back into its envelope and closed the drawer. The storm hadn't started yet, but it was already on its way. There's a photograph hanging in my parents' hallway. Sabrina stands in the middle, shining, her arm around our father. I'm on the edge, half my face swallowed by the glare of a flash. Even as a kid, I knew how fitting that was. She was the golden child, the talker, the charmer, the one who always knew what to say. I was the quiet one, the fixer, the afterthought. When I left for college in Portland, they threw a small dinner to celebrate. Sabrina announced her engagement that same night. Everyone clapped for her, and I remember thinking how perfectly timed her life always seemed. Years later, a call from the bank shattered that illusion. My parents had fallen behind on payments. I had been listed as guarantor. I remember staring at the phone in disbelief. I hadn't even known they'd taken another loan. Only later did I learn Sabrina had convinced them to sell part of the store's shares to fund her wedding. They never mentioned that either. I paid the overdue balance quietly, month after month, year after year. I never told anyone. I thought that kind of sacrifice was what good daughters did. Keep the family afloat, no matter the cost. Back then, I thought responsibility would earn me love. Now I see it only made me invisible. Last week, while clearing my inbox, an email popped up from the bank. New loan agreement, Whitmore Furniture. I frowned. The message had been sent to my parents and Sabrina, with her email address listed as the main contact. My stomach went cold. Whatever was about to happen at that dinner, it wasn't reunion, it was setup. The notification pinged again. I closed the laptop and stared at the reflection in the dark screen. For a long time, I didn't move. Somewhere in that reflection, half shadow, half light, I realized I was about to walk into the same frame I'd been cut out of all my life. This time, I wasn't going to stay silent. My father said it so proudly. Sabrina just finished paying off our house. The words hit harder than I expected. I had been the one sending $3,000 every month for 8 years. I stared at him, wondering if he could hear how cruel it sounded. When I asked, "With what money, Dad?" He smiled. "With hard work. Not everyone thinks about family the way she does." The glass in my hand cracked. Later that night, I opened my laptop. Rows of transfers filled the screen. My name as sender, my mother's as receiver. The banker's voice over the phone was calm. "Your mother's account redirects every payment to a secondary one under Sabrina's name." So that was it. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd rewritten the story. I called her. "You used Mom's account. Why?" Her laugh was soft, sharp. "You do everything for others, Cornelia, but never learn how to protect the family's image." "Image doesn't pay debt?" "No," she said, "but it buys respect." The rain started outside, tapping the windows. I sat there, motionless, whispering, "I've been financing my own humiliation." And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty, only awake. I went to the old store the next morning. The sign Whitmore Furniture hung crooked, like the truth itself. My mother was signing papers. "Transferring the store to Sabrina," she said, her tone calm, proud. The contract read, "Transfer of business ownership, Sabrina Whitmore. The store I'd saved now legally belonged to her." "You knew the money was mine," I said. She sighed. "She's doing this for the family. People think she's capable. That's good for us." Good for who? For everyone. I drove straight to Mariah's office. She listened quietly before saying, "Cornelia, this is abuse. Financial, emotional, moral. They're my family. Abuse doesn't stop being abuse just because it's family. Forgiveness isn't silence. It's knowing when to stop being their shield." On the way home, rain blurred the windshield. I rolled the window down, breathing in the cold air. "For years, I thought paying their debts would buy peace," I whispered. All it bought me was silence. The morning after my talk with Mariah, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Sabrina's face was everywhere, on local news, community blogs, the town paper's homepage. Local PR director saves her family business from bankruptcy. I turned on the TV. There she was, glowing under studio lights, hair perfect, voice soft. "I couldn't stand by watching my parents struggle," she said. "Family means giving without asking for credit." The audience clapped. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. That line wasn't just rehearsed. It was written to bury me. Messages poured in. "Your sister's amazing. Astoria's proud of her," one colleague texted. "Heard your sister saved the store. You okay?" I typed, "I'm fine," and deleted it twice before hitting send. My hand ached from gripping the phone too tightly. The whole town believed her. She'd built herself into a legend and turned me into the cold, selfish sister who'd done nothing. Then an email flashed across my screen. From Alex, an old friend at the bank. "Cornelia, thought you should know. The transfer logs from your account to your parents' mortgage are still archived. They were never deleted. Attached were 90 transactions, every one of them mine. $3,000 each month for 8 years. I scrolled through the records, my reflection trembling in the screen's glow. Proof. My proof. And yet all I felt was rage. Then I saw it, the new loan file. Whitmore & Co., $180,000. Collateral, family home. Sabrina had mortgaged my parents' house to fund another expansion. She was still gambling, but this time with my name and my guilt. I stepped outside. The sea wind hit hard, tasting like salt and iron. Waves crashed against the rocks below, angry, honest. "If truth is the storm," I whispered, "then I'll be the one to unleash it." It started raining the night I decided to stop being their ghost. I drove through the downpour until the old storefront came into view. Its windows glowed gold in the storm, and through the glass, I saw Sabrina, smiling for the camera, giving an interview under perfect lighting. "I couldn't have done it without my sister," she said, voice honeyed. The crowd laughed. The reporter grinned. A flawless lie dressed as grace. I turned to leave, but a voice called out behind me. "Cornelia, wait!" Miles ran toward me, soaked to the bone. His face was pale. "She's gone too far," he said. He hesitated, then confessed. "I knew about the payments. I told her to stop lying. But she said, 'If you ever spoke up, you'd destroy the family.' I looked at him through the rain. She already did." The words came out quiet, steady, final. When I got home, the house was dim, the fire still burning low. Oliver lifted his head, but didn't move. I sat on the floor and pulled out the old box from the drawer. Contracts, receipts, bank records. Each number on every page a piece of my silence. Every dollar a memory they'd erased. I gathered everything into a single folder, opened my laptop, created one word at the top. Truth, one by one. I attached every file, proof of every lie they'd built. The cursor hovered over Send. My breath came slow, steady. Then I pressed it. The sound of the email flying out, a soft whoosh, felt louder than any argument I'd ever had. I closed the laptop and turned toward the window. The rain had stopped. The sea was still. Tomorrow, they'd call it betrayal, but I'd call it restoration. When Sabrina walked onto the stage, flashing that perfect smile, I knew she was about to bury me one last time, under applause. The lights from the auditorium felt blinding, the air thick with perfume, champagne, and false praise. My name had just been called for the Restoration Harbor Award, and I was halfway to the podium when she appeared, sliding beside the host like she belonged there. "I just want to say something," she began, her voice smooth, practiced. "My sister taught me that you can serve your community quietly, without ever needing credit." The crowd erupted, cameras flashed, even the mayor clapped. I stood there, staring at her silhouette under the white-hot light. I could feel the weight of every lie she'd told, pressing against my ribs. My throat tightened, but my voice came out steady as I stepped to the microphone. "Restoration isn't about painting over cracks," I said. "It's about removing what's rotten underneath." The room went silent. Not one clap, not one cough. I looked straight at her and added, "Thank you for reminding me, Sabrina, that truth, like wood, only shines when it's stripped bare." Her smile faltered. Cameras still clicked, but the sound felt distant, hollow. I left the stage before anyone could say a word. Backstage. She cornered me, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she hissed. "You just ruined our family." "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped letting you ruin me." Her voice cracked, desperate now. "Please, if those papers ever get out." "They already have." I walked past her. Each step echoed against the marble floor, measured, final. The crowd outside was still clapping for someone, but I knew the sound wasn't meant for her anymore. By morning, everyone in Astoria had seen the truth, printed in black and white. The newspaper sat on every doorstep, in every cafe, beside every cup of coffee. The Oregon Tribune headline stretched across the front page. "Financial records reveal the real benefactor behind Whitmore family debt." Underneath was my name, my transactions, my signature, every payment traced, every lie undone. They had included copies of the mortgage transfers, bank logs, and even the loan contracts Sabrina had forged through my parents' accounts. There was no room left for denial. The story she had built, of the dutiful daughter who saved her struggling family, crumbled overnight. People whispered in grocery lines and coffee shops. The TV replayed clips from her interviews, now spliced with headlines calling them fabricated. I saw her photo on the screen, pale, hollow-eyed, nothing like the glowing woman who'd stood under the studio lights. My phone rang again and again. My mother's voice on voicemail was brittle. "Cornelia, call me back. Please." Then my father's text came, short and sharp. "What have you done to your sister?" I didn't call. I didn't owe them that anymore. I opened my laptop instead and wrote a single message. I paid the debt, not for pride, but for peace. You mistook one for the other. Then I hit send. Outside, the morning light felt strange, muted, silver. I watched the sea through the window, the waves slow and tired, like the world was finally catching its breath. By noon, the news had spread too far to stop. Sabrina had been suspended from her firm. Miles had left their house. The store, Whitmore & Co., was reclaimed by the bank when the unpaid loans surfaced. My parents moved into a small rental across the bridge. For the first time, no one called. Days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Handwritten, no return address. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. My father's penmanship, rigid, deliberate, proud even now. The letter contained only one line. "You were right, but you didn't have to be." I read it twice. The paper trembled slightly in my hand. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close to truth. A truth he had never been brave enough to say aloud. I left the letter on the table beside the open window. The wind caught the edge, fluttering it softly before it settled again. The light through the glass was pale gold, dust swirling in its path. The town had already moved on to its next headline, but inside, the silence felt clean. The noise, the shame, the pretending. It was all gone. I sat there for a long time, listening to the rhythm of the waves against the shore. It was the first morning I'd heard them without flinching, the quiet after the storm. The sea was calm again. For the first time in years, so was I. The morning light slipped through the curtains, soft and gold, carrying the scent of salt and pine. I sat by the window with a cup of coffee warming my hands. Beside it rested the old box tied with a red ribbon, the one that had once held contracts, bank slips, and debts. Now it was nothing more than a keepsake, a symbol of everything I had carried and finally set down. A letter lay on the table, the paper thin and folded twice. My father's handwriting, still neat, still proud. "You saved us from our own pride. Thank you." No apology, no explanation, just truth, finally stripped of its armor. I read it once, then placed it inside the box. There were no tears this time, only a quiet, steady kind of peace that came from knowing the storm had done its work. Later that day, I returned to my office. Sunlight spilled across the drafting table, where a new project waited. Bold letters pinned above the blueprints. The Whitmore Archive. A community space for stories like mine. For people who had been invisible, overlooked, forgotten. The ones who built, gave, and endured without applause. Maybe that's what restoration really means, I thought, tracing the outline of a doorway, giving voice to what was once unseen. By evening, I drove back to the house by the bay. The sky was fading into silver, the water a sheet of glass. The world felt clean again. I opened my journal, the last page waiting, and wrote, "Some families you inherit, others you rebuild from the ruins." I closed the book, smiled, and set it beside the window. The light from the house glowed softly against the twilight, a small, steady warmth in the quiet world outside. The waves whispered against the rocks, the piano on the radio barely audible, as if breathing with me, and as the sun sank behind the horizon, I realized peace wasn't something you found. It was something you chose to build.